Hey, welcome back to Brighter Rays. We are looking at the very end of the book of Genesis, Genesis chapter 50. And today we're just going to do a little conclusion here. So next week we're going to take some time. The plan is to take next week and try to wrap up the study in Genesis. Because we want to just kind of do an overview, a review of Genesis. One of the main things that we see in Genesis is that it points forward to Christ. That's one of the obvious purposes of the book, is that it was a shadow. It was to show different types of Christ, and so we can see and compare and contrast, and we'll kind of do that next time. See what we learn there. But next week we'll do that, kind of wrap everything up. But before we end our time here in Genesis, I'd like to make one application that I think is necessary for us. You must remember the words of Joseph. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. It's a clear statement of the sovereignty of God. Saying God's in control. You tried to do something, but God was really in control the whole time. But his sovereignty is not just some distant theological idea, is it though? It wasn't for them. It's not just, saying that we can recite to people. It's not just a quaint saying, well, God is sovereign, And it's not something we just write in a get well soon card, So God is in control. God is sovereign. And it's just some kind of nice little saying that we throw out there. It's the truth. Jesus said of himself, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Paul says in Ephesians that Jesus is far above all rule and authority and power and dominion, and above every name that is named, not only in this age, right now, but also in the one to come. So, Jesus' name is above all names right now. All things, he says, are under his feet, and he is head over all things. Do we believe this? Do we actually believe this? Or is Jesus' authority just something for us that happens in the future? He's not just our authority when we get to heaven, right? Jesus is not just the authority when he returns physically to earth, because we all believe that he's going to do that one day. That's not when his authority begins. It says he's authority right now, in this age, and the one to come. So, no matter what our ideas of the end of the world is, no matter what eschatological view we take, it doesn't matter, because he's the authority now in this age. So it says, Paul also says, see to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ. For in him the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily, and you have been filled in him, who is the head of all rule and authority. So the question is, if God is the sovereign, and we like to say that, right? God's sovereignty, God is sovereign. If we say that, do we actually believe that? Do we act accordingly? Because that's not just an abstract idea, right? It affects the way we live. It affects the way we think. Because if God is in control now, if he is the king now, if all authority has been given to him in this age right now, then we need to live accordingly. And why do we allow everybody else just to ignore that? Like, if he is the king, he's the one in control, and everyone else is disobeying the king, what? We're just supposed to sit back and whatever. We love this king, right? This is our king. This is the king we want to rule over us. This is the king who will rule over us for all eternity. And we say we love him, but then we just are okay with everyone in the world just, whatever, just ignoring him. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why wouldn't we declare to the world that God is in control? God is the king. Jesus reigns right now. He's the authority right now. Do we love people? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's because we don't love people. And maybe that's why. Because we don't love people. We don't love other people. Then we don't care if they disgrace the king. We don't care if they ignore, the authority of Christ right now. Maybe we don't really love them. And that's horrible. We're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves, but then we're like, we don't need to tell people what the law of God says. We don't need to, show them what the law of God is. We don't care. Because in the end, they're just going to get burned up anyway. That's a horrible way to think. So we need to have more love of our neighbor, I think. Real love, not this fake love that's going around these days. But real love that cares for, the souls of people. And which in Leviticus talks about, rebuking your neighbor. So part of that is love. So we need to keep that in mind as we go through this, as we think about the sovereignty of God. We see that clearly in the book. God has plans. He's the authority. You can't change his plans. You can't go against his plan, because his plan will win all the time. You can try to do things against him. You can do evil. But God can use that evil for his own good purposes. He can take it and flip it on its head and say, okay, you did this? Fine, I'll use it for this purpose. You want to try to kill Joseph? Fine, I will make him second command of all Egypt. And I will save all these people through him because of your sin. That's what God does. So we need to respect that. We need to honor the king as he's due. All right, well, that's the end of our study for this week. Come back next time and we will look at just kind of an overview of all of Genesis. I shouldn't say Egypt too much. We'll take a look at all of Genesis and see how Christ really was the thread, one of the main threads that goes throughout the entire book. So come back next time.